I'm going to regret this.
Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hi, this is Nick Anastasiou, story editor on Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Bad Batch. And you are listening to Aggressive Negotiations.
Indeed, welcome to Aggressive Negotiations, your Star Wars podcast, here on the Nerd Party Network that explores all of the different aspects, angles, facets, and every other way you want to say it about the deep, deep dive topics of Star Wars. I am John Mills, and I am pleased to be joined this week, as usual, by my esteemed friend and colleague, Jedi Master Matthew Rushing. Matt, are you ready to revisit a beastie from the past in today's episode of The Bad Batch as we continue our Season 2 rewatch?
You know, I just love, as we've been walking through this series here in Season 2, and just how many of the episodes have allusions to favorite films in the genres that we all love. And this one, it does not leave you hanging. It gives you some of the same vibes that you loved in films like Alien or Aliens or Prometheus. Well, not Prometheus, because that movie gave me a seizure and I hate
loved
it.
Prometheus, man. No. Come on.
Yeah. Alien Covenant, better. So, you know, it's just, again, it's one of those places where we've talked about multiple times here on this show, but that was the beauty of the Clone Wars, was picking up that idea that we can do many different types of stories. And one of the most outlandish stories, John, that we got in the Clone Wars had to be the Zillo Beast episode where we pulled out Filoni's love of Godzilla and had a Godzilla monster basically running rampage all over Coruscant. And so I think...
Yes.
And of course, I think we both agree that they nailed that episode. And so then to have that come back was genius, because it was something where at the very end of that episode, there was the stinger with Palpatine. And I really, really enjoy that here with the Bad Batch, we're picking up that story, and not only are we running with it, but this leads us into a whole new direction to which we are like, this is the episode where we meet our incredibly main villain for the series. This is where we first go to Mount Tantus. You know, this is where all of that track starts to get laid that's going to take us to the end of the series. And so, you know, to be able to have that all happen here in this episode, just a joy to rewatch again.
And if anybody has any question, what we're on the episode Metamorphosis from Season 2 of The Bad Batch. I share Matt's excitement with this because, Matt, like you said, this brings back Zillo Beast, where we had a Godzilla episode basically of the Clone Wars. And this puts the Batch into alien territory. There's even down to the noises and the drop downs and the jump scares and all of those sorts of things.
I mean, the like gooey liquid
left on things. Yes, left everywhere. And like you said, I think let's just go on and embrace it right away. The idea of how Palpatine was constructing this from before even becoming Supreme Chancellor and then Emperor, that this was all in motion. And since this goes back to from before he was Emperor, it shows that he had all, like, there was never any escape from Palpatine. He was an inevitability to take everything over. And, you know, we can table sort of the idea of like talking about how no matter what, he was setting up the Sith for success and why he was reticent to do what Sith should have done. And, you know, he takes the shortcut with Dooku, all of that stuff. But like, in terms of meeting Hemlock, that is the capper to the episode. But let's rewind it. When you saw that we had Zillo Beast Jr., what was your reaction? Like the first time you saw this episode and you saw Zillo Beast Jr., what was your reaction like? Because mine might not be what you expect, but I'm curious to know, like, how did you take that? when you first saw it on screen?
I mean, yeah, I would say utter delight and glee for me when I realized that that's what we were doing in this episode. You know, the first drop down moment, and you're like, oh, that has to be the same thing, right? And then, of course, the realization, you know, as it grows, that it is. And I was just so excited that we weren't going to leave that, you know, a dangling thread from the Clone Wars, that we were going to pick up on that. And then now retrospectively seeing how they use that to tie in everything else that this series is, you know, just full steam ahead now on season 3. It's great. It's great. So you said that it wasn't necessarily what I'd expect or whatever. What for you? What was it?
I will be completely honest that when little Zillobees Jr. showed up, it was weird because I refused to believe what I was seeing for a second, where I was like, no, that can't be. Like, I thought it was just like a coincidence of design. I was like, no, it can't be. And it wasn't until I saw the thing eat Wrecker's staff where I went, oh my gosh, it really is. Like, it was one of delight, but it was a delayed reaction because I'm so used to franchises refusing to, quote unquote, give that connection to a previous sort of thing.
Right.
It's viewed as gauche in some franchises. Oh, well, no, we'll do something like that, but not the thing from then. And to tie it together like that and do exactly what a sequel series or movie should do, which is expand the universe and carry on, and then give the longtime fans a little nugget. If you've never watched Clone Wars, you can still plug into this because they give you the information where it's like, oh my gosh, this is a thing. It ran wild on Coruscant, and oh my gosh, Palpatine was doing this before he even became Emperor. But if we've seen it, it's that love mark that says the universe, like the universe we created before, didn't go away. This is the same universe we were in. And so that was sort of like my delayed reaction because I'm just not used to franchises being that thoughtful. Is that the right word? That thoughtful about those of us who have been there for a while.
Yeah, I mean, you think back actually to when the Next Generation started of Star Trek, right? And they didn't want, and Roddenberry did not want to touch anything from the original series, you know, and that loosened up over time. But that's one of those places where that absolutely happened. And so we as fans kind of came to expect that they, you know, these things would shy away from. And I think that's the beauty of Star Wars in general, is that George was never afraid to have these things connect. In fact, that's what it was all about, because it was one interconnected story. And I think, you know, Filoni absolutely learned that when you can bring in something that has already been utilized or used or hinted at, go ahead and do that, because it's okay. It's okay to do that. And it makes for a much more fun story to be able to watch, you know? And
Absolutely.
I mean, but I think that's the thing that also makes this episode so interesting, because, you know, it picks up where we left off basically from the last episode, where they've escaped that planet. And now the repercussions with Sid are happening. You can see that it has progressed, that not only are we not trusting Sid, but we're trying to find a way to escape under Sid's thumb now. And to me, then the way that she's dealing with the clones makes things feel even more foreboding for them, when Tech suggests maybe we can find a diplomatic way out of this. We do this one last job and then we can get out, you know. And of course, you know, like Michael Corleone, they'll find that every time I think I'm out, they keep pulling me back in. And so that's another place where this series is starting to slowly pick up in some ways in its serialization of itself. And even though the episodes are still like, this is one I could just pop in at any point, it does make for a joyful experience of watching more quickly. If you were to watch 3, 4, 5 episodes at a time, it really plays together so well.
Well, I would say that I'm glad you point out the Sid thing because Rhea Perlman's vocal performance here, or how she's directed, how she performs it, there's a more sinister edge to Sid's moment here.
There really is.
Like she suddenly seems a little more, and I think that there's even some careful choices with camera positioning and also her eyes and her body movements really, all of a sudden, Sid is no longer this sort of quasi-comical, low-level crime boss, or not even crime boss, but like low-level thug sort of thing. Now Sid really is becoming sort of scary.
Yes.
That might seem like it's overstating it, but like really in that moment, it's unsettling. And Tech is the one who puts the cherry on top, saying maybe there's a diplomatic way out of this. Like, but also there's still humor in that moment, because one of the things I keyed on the first time I watched it, and when I watched it this time, is I love how, I'll give you 30%. That's our standard thing. 35%. And if you pay attention to Wrecker, he perks up. He's like, yeah, that's a great, like he has a smile. He's like, yeah, that's a great deal. And they're just like, fine, 40%. And Wrecker's ready to say, okay. And it's like, it's Hunter and Tech that are like, no. We got to have a real.
Like that's our usual percentage, basically.
But that's the beautiful thing, is that that's a character moment that you get. Where if you're paying attention, and it's just on the side of the screen, Wrecker's ready to just shake. He's like Kramer negotiating over the coffee burn, right? Or the cigarettes. He'll go right in and shake the hand immediately, sort of thing. Because that's not Wrecker's forte. He's not the brains of the operation, sort of thing. Yeah. So yeah, I really like that you point out Sid, because that is a very very worthwhile sort of thing to dwell on here, because like you said, this is a turning point. Hemlock coming in, everything starts to feel a little, what's the word I'm looking for? Feels a little more foreboding than before.
I think the interesting thing about Hemlock as a character, and I'd be interested to know, from the animator's perspective, the writer's perspective, if, somebody like a Hannibal was a inspiration for him, because just the way he speaks, it's so calm and so creepy, and the things that he's doing are so evil, right? They're Hannibal level type of evil. In fact, even at the beginning of the episode, we get a little bit of a taste of exactly what he's trying to do, and what Palpatine wants of him when Nala Se says, I know what the Emperor wants, and I don't want to be a part of it. And you start to get this subtle picture of, and of course, by the end of the episode, when they say the best way to control Nala Se is with the young girl, and it's like, oh, okay, somehow she means something to all this. So yeah, them bringing in Hemlock lets you know that everything in this series is changing. Again, we've talked about that a bunch in this season, but this season is continually kind of slowly sliding into a different level of hell for these characters. And I really appreciate, again, by bringing him in, you ramp everything up. You not only ramp everything up for the batch, but you ramp everything up for the galaxy itself and what the Empire is doing behind the scenes.
Well, there's also, I think, with Hemlock, he's a less honorable Thrawn, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can see that. Yep.
Thrawn is evil. Thrawn's a bad guy. But I can respect him. I don't agree with him and how he gets to certain things, but I'm like, okay, I can sort of figure out how Thrawn is coming at things. Hemlock's unsettling because his delivery is similar to Thrawn's, but there's something, and I'll give the animators, I'll give the editors, everything, the credit for the way they light his eyes, the way that they make him look very like the way that they did with the Emperor, to evoke the old school, film noir the light highlights my eyes sort of thing. So the rest of my face is shadowy. It's very unsettling to look at. But he has this menace about him that maybe it's my old school fanboy sort of thing, that Thrawn never strikes me as menacing in this same way, mainly because I think he's a delight. Like I don't root for Thrawn, but at the same time, Thrawn gives me that sort of like little jolt, whereas Hemlock is, like you said, that's that Hannibal Lecter type of character where it's like, I don't want to spend a lot of time with this guy. He's kind of freaking me out here.
Well, I think it's because Thrawn is after something, right? He is after something that means something to him. That's important to him. He has a code, and I think that's what makes him interesting. Whereas Hemlock is the completely amoral character who delights in creating these aberrations of evil, right? That's who this character is. He's so evil that he delights in evil, and that's what makes him terrifying. And again, I think the thought process that the Empire is doing these experiments on something like the Zillo Beast, that they've already upgraded this Zillo Beast, and that's why the blasters had no effect on it. That they've already been working on this is very terrifying. And then the fact that you have the last Kaminoans here on this planet that we don't have a name for yet. We don't know where this is. And they're working on something that terrifies Nala Se is just great. It's such good setup for the series.
Well, it escalates Palpatine. It makes Palpatine more frightening, because much like over time, when you grow up and you watch Star Wars repeatedly, and Luke always blows up the Death Star, the true horror of what the Death Star is sort of gets lost on you over time. Brass tacks right there. The Death Star just becomes a cool thing that's like, oh, it can blow up planets. And it's like, that's a really massively terrifying sort of instrument when you really think about it for a second.
Right.
And then having these programs actually elevates how terrifying the Death Star is, where you go, oh, wait a minute. No, the Palpatine isn't a mustache twirling villain. He's pure evil.
Right.
Like, these are people who are working for him. They're delivering these things to him because they view him as giving something back to them that they want. And that makes all of these characters even more intriguing, and it makes Vader more terrifying, because it's like, oh wow, Anakin, you really cast in with a bad crowd here. Like, wow, it makes Vader evil again instead of an anti-hero sort of thing. Makes Vader truly evil in this phase just by having people like Hemlock enter the storyline. But additionally with the Empire, and I really thought about it this time as I was watching it, because I think in this episode, it's the easiest thing to sleep on, but it is a very important accent point, is the townsfolk who were witnesses to this. There's no...
Oh, yes.
There's no official denial. There's no cover story. These people are disappeared.
Oh, yeah.
Their only crime is living where a thing happened that the Empire doesn't want people knowing about.
Yes.
And what's interesting is the leader of the commandos that goes in and gets all of the people. A lot of credit to the way they animate it in the shot selection, because you see him sag a little bit, and it gives enough room for you to look at it and say to yourself, is he experiencing some sort of regret right now, or some sort of like what's going on? Which then, not to foreshadow too much, ties into something that happens in the third season, where the leader of a commando squad has a moment to ask himself, what are we doing here? Like, well, why are we doing this? And so I think that's maybe I'm reading too much into the moment, but I just see that horrible thing happening, and it's like that's the true evil of something like the Empire. It's easy for us to be like, oh, well, the Republic was also disorganized. The Republic also abused their power. The Republic was also corrupt. Yeah, but so far as I know, the Republic didn't send troops out to disappear a town because they saw something. You know, like there's a core difference right there.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very important difference.
No, I think you're 100% right in that, and I'm very glad that you brought it up because it's something that I thought about as I was watching the episode, which was, you know, they're going to blame what happened on Jeddah to the Senate as a mining accident. And then we're going to get, of course, in Star Wars, where the Senate has finally officially been disbanded. And, what my guess is that between what happens on Jeddah and then that happening there have been too many senators raising alarms. And the Emperor's like, you know what? I don't need to deal with this anymore. I got a planet destroying machine. I'm just going to put the governors in charge. I don't need the Senate anymore. And so you see these ways in which the Empire is doing these things. And here, like you said, this is a remote system, it seems like. It's not in the way of anything. And so to disappear the people on this planet will mean nothing to no one other than the people that were there. And so the fact that they're already taking these measures is terrifying. It's the same kind of thing where, there was the mining accident that happened on Andor's planet that he was originally from, Canary, and it destroyed the entire planet. Like, it ruined it for life. And so, and nobody cared. And so this is just one more place where the insidious nature of the Empire is creeping in slowly but surely everywhere. And all of these episodes in this season have really been about building to that, right? To getting us to a place where are good people going to do nothing? Or are they going to do something?
Yeah, it's actually it's interesting too in the sense that this is where Bad Batch continues to set itself apart. It would be too easy for a show like this simply to say, it's the A-Team but with clones, and we'll just tell a different story every week. Instead, this show has the courage to start stitching things together and say, no, you know what? We're part of a larger whole. And what it reminds me of, in all honesty, is sort of what happened with Rebels. Only there seems to be a little more intent from the outset with the Bad Batch. Almost like, everybody took a lesson to heart from Rebels, because Rebels started out as sort of like that episodic, we're just going to have a different adventure every season, and this is blah, blah, blah. And then it ties into the larger narrative. I think Bad Batch ties in earlier, and I know this is a really tortured way to get around to it, but basically from the beginning, but now it ramps it up even more. At this point in the second season, Bad Batch has embraced being part of that larger narrative instead of just saying, look, we know you want some Star Wars, so we're just going to give you a show and you're going to have adventures every week. And here you go. How many franchises do we know where they basically say, here you go, fans. Yeah. We know you like the armor and the stuff like that. We'll just keep churning this out till people stop watching it. Instead, there's a sense of intent and purpose to the Bad Batch.
Right.
That makes you excited for every week.
No, I mean, I think you're completely right in that. I think to kind of call out, and not in a bad way, but just to say, I think that's kind of where Rebels started. And it was not on the intent of the creators. It was basically the intent of Disney, right? They just wanted something as quickly as possible out there. And instead of getting caught in that, somebody like Filoni intentionally persevered to make sure that it was a show that mattered in the end. And I think that's the thing that's the difference, right? You're intentionally making sure that you're not losing yourself and just doing something to do something.
Yep. Just like there's a reason for people to reach out to you online. And maybe you can tell them where they can find you.
Well, you can find me all over social media under the name MattRushing02. You can also find me here on the network on a show called Owl Post. I did that with Drea Kaufman. We talked about every single chapter of the Harry Potter series, one chapter at a time. You can also find me over on the TFM network talking about a bunch of different things. One is in the 602 Club, where I'm talking about lots of franchises that we love. John Mills is a frequent guest there, so I hope you'll enjoy listening to us there. You can also find me doing Literary Treks, The Orb, Warp 5, The Artificial Tango, and Saddle Up. But John, I know that there are a lot of different ways that people can connect with you. And so if they wanted to do that, where would they find you?
Well, gosh, you can find me as Kessel Junkie on your social network of choice. Primarily, I hang out on Twitter. And you can find me here on the network co-hosting a show called House Lights, a film director podcast where we get into all sorts of silly discussions about serious directors. But, Matt, honestly, I think I need to put some Zillow Beast repellent over back on the temple just to protect us there. So I think it's time to close these negotiations.
John, negotiations are closed.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.